Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining SPJ Nominations Committee's Election Tips virtual panel. This is our last one of this election cycle, so thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. Today we have our current SPJ president, Rebecca Aguilar, joining us today. We also have Danielle McLean, who is a current SPJ board member. We'll also be joined in a couple of minutes by Pilar Petraza, who is a current regional coordinator. Of course, because we're all journalists, that means sometimes stories come up at inopportune moments and we have to go where the story is. So she is currently working on a story. She's going to get on here as soon as she can, and then we'll bring her into the fold. So I want to get started by first talking a little bit about your experiences in deciding that you wanted to be a part of the SPJ board and what that has been like for you. So if we could start with Rebecca, that would be really helpful.
So my experience kind of started in 2010 when I was recruited by the then digital committee chair. They wanted me to join the committee because they needed diversity. And so I thought, okay, I knew nothing about SPJ, to be honest with you. I grew up with NHJ, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. So I always thought SPJ was just for print people. My background is in television news. And so they pulled me in and they basically said, we need diversity on the committee, which it did. And then I kind of started seeing the structure of it during that time. Since 2010, I then looked at the local chapter in Fort Worth and thought, well, what do they have to offer? Because they have an NHJ chapter in Dallas, right? And so they also needed diversity. And so they brought me into the fold and I looked at that. And I would go to conventions because eventually NHJ and SPJ and RTDNA, they kind of merged into a collaboration. So I've exposed to all these organizations. And it really was in, I'd say 2019 or 2018, the president, Alex Triquenio, approached me and said, you should run for the board. And I was like, okay, well, tell me why. Because I'd already sat on the board at NHJ. You know what it takes, the politics, the projects, the time. And she said, we need diversity. And so that should be my middle name, Rebecca Diversity Aguilar, because I thought that's what it needed. And I also thought that SPJ had a lot to offer. I mean, it has code of ethics. NHJ does not have that. It has a lot to offer that other organizations don't have. So it was twofold. It was good for me as a journalist, but also I thought as a person of a diverse background with my journalism background and television news too, I would be an asset for the organization.
Danielle, same question to you. What was kind of the impetus of you wanting to be involved, and what has your experience been so far?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I started getting involved in like 2013, 2012, sometime around that area. The former president of SPJ New England chapter was one of my good friends, Emily Sweeney, and she was looking to kind of step aside, and she had kind of kept the chapter afloat. It hadn't been very active in years, and so I took over that role. We immediately had to organize a Region 1 conference, and I really tried to focus on, A, getting that Region 1 conference out the door, B, like really just recruiting different people to, serve on this board for the New England chapter. It really had been dormant for years, and we did some like FOIA advocacy. We actually held a all journalist protest on Beacon Hill in Massachusetts in protest of like a new FOIA law that was being implemented there, and trying to advance open records there. It was like blistering cold, and we got like 50 journalists out there, and we just really got some like good renewed energy and some really strong leaders that have kind of taken the ball since. I moved to Maine, which eventually got folded into the New England chapter. It was its own standalone chapter. It also been kind of dormant, kind of held together by like Erwin Bratz, like one of our, longtime SPJ leaders. And we absorbed in the New England chapter, but I kind of stepped aside and let like a new young generation of leaders kind of step in and take over like the New England chapter. And it's been kind of like just kind of taken off like since, and it's been really exciting to see. And I went and led the Freedom of Information Committee for a couple of years. We did some really strong advocacy work with FOIA and open records reform, but also like whistleblower protections. We did this like really ambitious project. Where we called the Whistleblower Project that would pretty much was like, the tour de force for like whistleblower advocacy. And we actually partnered with a bunch of different whistleblower organizations to launch this on Sunshine Week a couple of years ago. Then I led the ethics committee, and now it was just kind of about like taking all I learned, through the ethics committee, my work for the New England chapter, my work on the Freedom of Information Committee, and just being a member of SPJ New England or SPJ for several years. And I just I felt like I could take that level of commitment to another level and learn more about the organization, but also just get a chance to like help use my voice and my influence and all of the great wisdom that I kind of learned and try to help further the organization that I really had this like really deep passion for, and really something that I feel like is like just a bedrock to democracy. So that's kind of like where I went. Rebecca, I initially I ran for a treasurer position. I lost the election last year, but Rebecca was nice enough to appoint me to the at-large position. So, I give a lot of credit to her for thinking of me and, thinking I was deserving of such an honor. So.
It's been an interesting road for you, and I think maybe a lot of people are starting off in the chapter level and trying to figure out, okay, is this something that I can do? So I think hearing your particular story and your trajectory, I'm sure is very, very helpful in kind of getting people to think, okay, maybe I can do this, right? Pilar, thank you so much for joining us. I see that you're able to join in. I would love to ask you the same question that I asked Rebecca and Danielle. I know that your trajectory to the regional coordinator position was a little bit different. You were appointed, but can you share a little bit about what that experience has been like for you as a regional coordinator?
Well, it's kind of learning on the job, just figuring it out as I go. I guess in some ways, being appointed, I was lucky in that this is a region that's not really that active. We only have a handful of active chapters, so that's allowed me to have a little bit of time to figure things out and grow into the role a bit. Excuse me. Yeah, I think what really hit me hard was having to coordinate the conference. And being the type A that I am, of course, it was like, we figured it out, we got it done.
And you did a great job.
It's a lot about building those relationships. And of course, I knew Rebecca for quite some time. And that's why she asked me to jump in when the position opened up. And so it's just constantly peppering her with questions. She connected me with other people, peppering them with questions. If somebody didn't know the answer, they directed me to someone else who they thought might know the answer. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that I can say is you don't have to know it all going in. There are a lot of people who have been around, who have been doing things. They're happy to answer your questions and help you figure it out as you go. I can't thank my local chapter enough, the Pro Kansas chapter. They just bent over backward to help me get that conference pulled off. And they really didn't know anything about how to do it either. So it was a blind leading the blind, but you know what? We all figure it out together. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson from all of this.
I know that, this is definitely an organization that depends upon relationships that you have either within the board, within the chapters, within other members. Can we talk a little bit about, the strength in that, the strength in the relationships you all have been able to build as being a part of the board, being a regional coordinator? Let's talk a little bit about that. Rebecca, can we start with you?
Relationships are everything. I mean, I grew up like Pilar in NHJ. Our relationship comes from that. I know Danielle when she was just a little young thing, starting up in this SPJ. Relationships are everything. A good leader sees other people's leadership skills even when they don't even see them themselves. And that's what I think is my strength. and having great relationships and having people who trust me, but also looking outside my network, right? I mean, did Pilar and I hang out? No. But I knew, well, she's been at a few parties I've been at, but, we don't hang out. It's not like we talk that same thing. But I think what those relationships mean is when I call, like I did, both of them said, hey, I told Danielle McLean, I know that you lost this race, but I think you can do this. I can, come on in. I knew that Pilar, I don't think she was even really part of SPJ. Were you, Pilar?
No, I was not actually a member when you called me.
And I said, hey, you know what? I know you've done things for NHJ, but I see this. I think you can do this. And those relationships matter because, it's about, I'll be honest, when I became Secretary Treasurer, back then I planned. I knew that if I was going to be president, I had to be strategic. Strategic because there was a stronghold by a certain group. And I knew that I had to make sure that in a sense, I found new, fresh voices, diverse voices from other organizations, people who are really in the trenches of journalism, in the newsroom, in the classroom. And all those relationships, if you see the majority of the people that are heads of committees, many of chapter leaders, just people that I put in projects, those relationships help you. And I'm fortunate that rarely people say no to me, but they know, like Pilar, she's like, oh my God, I have a conference. And I said, yes, but she knows that I will not abandon you. I don't put you somewhere. I'm going to be there. I'm going to do everything I can to help you succeed, because when they succeed, I succeed and the organization benefits. So it is key for anybody who wants to run for office. Look at your relationships, but also look outside your own network. People you may not even know, but they got it. They can do it. You just need to open that door for them.
Danielle, same question. What have the relationships you've been able to build at the chapter level, and then also now that you're on the board, what has that meant for you in being part of SPJ?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, just for my journalism career, I've learned that, you don't know what you don't know, and you have to go and ask the questions. You have to go get different perspectives. You can't report on like an issue without talking to people, without talking to diverse voices, diverse people that come from diverse perspectives. And so, when you're trying to do an initiative as SPJ, when you're trying to further a cause, when you're trying to, lead like a board, you're trying to convince people that what you're trying to do is the correct way to go about doing it, or you're trying to figure out what the correct way to do things are. You need to talk to people. You need to understand where people are coming from. You need to understand what people want, why people want to be there, and want to contribute, and to try and build that consensus and try to find the best way forward. And so it's in order to know and in order to figure out the best way to go forward with this organization, you really have to talk to everybody. And I would think of SPJ as it's like a city, and the way you lead a city is by talking to the people that are going to be impacted by decisions, talking to everybody, and that's really what it's about. One thing that you decide to do at SPJ has ripple effects throughout the organization, has ripple effects throughout the entire industry. And so it's everything. Those relationships and those conversations are really everything.
Pilar, I know you mentioned briefly about pulling together the regional conference for your particular region, and leaning on those relationships from the chapters in that region. As a regional coordinator, how important is it for you to have those kind of connections, and how were you able to build those kind of connections as a regional coordinator?
I think it's vital as a regional coordinator to have those connections, whether you have them before or not. You definitely need to build them while you're in position. And honestly, I'm still building that network, especially with the schools. I was not aware of half the schools that are in my region when I started. But I will say that for me, the relationships, it actually started before I even said yes to this position. It was talking with my family, because this does take time away. This is outside of work. This is extra, family time that's going bye-bye when you're doing this stuff. It was talking to my family, making sure they were on board. It was talking to my newsroom, specifically to my news director, and making sure that he was on board, because it was going to pull me out of news occasionally. And so it's having those relationships in place first. When it came time to start setting up a conference, at least as far as I'm concerned, it was all about relationships, because I didn't have anything to work on, any model to work off of. I had no idea what had been done before. So I just went with my idea of this is what a journalism conference is, based mostly off of NAHJ and MPPA, which is what my experiences had been, and kind of built a conference from the ground up that way, calling in favors all over the place, realizing I know more people in the industry than I thought as I went along, if not directly, then secondary and tertiary. And, you know, I had one situation, one of our former anchors is Larry Hadberg, who's well known in broadcast journalism, for Hadberg's People and for writing to video and audio and that sort of stuff. And he's an alum from my station and still lives in the area. So I'm like, you know what? Least he can do, worst he can do is say no. He not only agreed to be our keynote speaker, but he also agreed to teach a seminar on writing to audio, matching your audio and video and writing to what you have. And he's like, do you mind if I bring somebody in on Zoom? I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, I'm going to bring Bob Dotson in. And I'm going, what?
I know. Wow.
It's like step by step by step. You never know. You got to ask. But when you ask, you never know what doors are going to be opened up to you. And that's really, you know, now I have a much closer relationship with Larry Hadberg. He and I knew each other kind of like Rebecca and I knew each other. We'd been to the same parties. We were aware of each other. We'd run in the same circles, but we really hadn't had a very close relationship. We've got each other's cell phone numbers now. And you know what? Another event comes up. He'll contact me. I'll contact him. We're right back in it.
And let me go off what she just said. Relationships are so key. Larry Hadberg, who she just mentioned, he changed my life when I started in the business. He came to my little TV station in Toledo, Ohio, and said, you need to write to video. And when she told me that he was going to speak, I immediately wrote him. And, you know, he had known, you know, when I became president, I reached out to him to tell him, if I'm a success today, it's because of you. And so when she said he was going to be at her conference, it was like full circle for me. I mean, I wish I could have been able to go there. I don't know, I think it was because of COVID. And then same thing with Bob Dotson, someone who I admire for being such a fantastic journalist. And yeah, I mean, what happened? Because I reached out to him and said, thank you for taking part of it. I mean, immediately we hooked up on LinkedIn and Twitter. And that's what relationships are all about. So Bilal, thank you so much for doing a great job out there. And I hope you write the handbook on how to have a successful conference. Because we don't have one. Anyway.
I know a lot of what we were talking about tangentially is leadership, right? You know, taking the initiative to reach out to chapters, taking the initiative to be involved in chapters, taking the initiative to run for president. Can we talk a little bit about some of the key characteristics we think are necessary to be a leader, especially a leader in SPJ? Rebecca, can we start with you?
Sure. You have to have a plan. Okay, you have to have a plan. You can't just, let me back up. Look deep in your soul on why you really want to do it, okay? Right now, there are people running for IRE, NHJ, and our own organization that will. And many of them have approached me for support. And the first thing I say is, why are you doing it? Some are honest. I think it'll look great on my resume. You don't want to do it for your resume. You don't want to do it for your resume. Because, you know, remember, it's just like a job recommendation. If someone calls me and says, hey, you know, how is so-and-so on your board? I'm going to be truthful. I put them on a task. They never got it done. I'm going to be transparent. You want someone that is going to say they came to work for the organization. It's not about me. It's about SPJ. That's number one. Why are you really doing it? Is it for the organization and to contribute to journalism, or is it for your ego and your resume? I hope you choose the organization. I also think in your plan, have 3 doable goals. Again, the other day, someone reached out to me from another organization. They want my support. And I said, tell me 3 doable goals. Well, you know, I want to do this, but how do you plan to accomplish it? Because, you know, I mean, I can say, you know, I want to increase the number of Latinos at SPJ. Well, okay, but how are you going to do that? 3 doable goals. And if you're going to run for re-election, believe me, I'm going to go back to those 3 doable goals and say, why didn't you do any of these? I think that's important. And like Pilar said, you need to have time. Time because your family and your job, remember, the SPJ doesn't pay the bills. This is all volunteer. And believe me, as the higher you go up in the food chain, like to my level, I live and breathe SPJ 24/7. I literally have had to turn down 2 very well-paid journalism jobs. I mean, freelance jobs because of this position. It's okay. I mean, you know, I have a husband, so we can take care of that. But what I'm saying is make sure you have time, quality time, just like you do for your family and your job. You're going to need quality time over here. Because again, people will come back and say, what did you do? You promised this. And there's nothing more disappointing than a board member who made all these promises and never came through.
Danielle, how about you? What are some key kind of leadership qualities you think that folks should have as they're deciding whether or not they want to go on this journey of leadership at SPJ?
Yeah, no, I want to agree with everything Rebecca said. And, you know, I'd say also a passion for this, you know, a passion for journalism, a passion for, you know, the freedom of the press, a passion for ethical journalism and trying to further this. You know, this is, like Rebecca was saying, this is a huge commitment. There is a lot of work, but it's worth it. But it's the end of the prize is just knowing that you have helped bring awareness to a cause, you have helped educate journalists, you have helped train journalists, you have helped make this industry better. And you're doing everything you can to try and, you know, to be that beacon for the fourth estate. And that's what it's all about. And so if you have that passion, you know, you can bear through a lot of, you know, challenges that you're going to go through in a leadership position, because it's all worth it at the end, just knowing that you've done everything possible to, you know, make this industry better and try to leave this industry a little bit better than, you know, when you walked in. That's what it's about. So, you know, I think that's very key.
Pilar, I have the same question to you, and I want to add a question. So the same question, what are some of the key leadership skills that you think that are needed for any of these roles, you know, for you specifically, regional coordinator? But I also want to kind of go back to something that you mentioned where you said, you know, I reached out to my news director and said, hey, this is happening. I reached out to my family, right? So I also want you to kind of touch on, how do you do that balance work, right? How do you make sure that you are being there and being able to fulfill all of the responsibilities of your role with SPJ, and also being able to do your full-time job and be there for your family and all of those things, right?
Well, first, I'm going to apologize. It may be a little noisy on my end. I had to hop onto this from my car right after a last-minute interview, and it started to rain now. So,
it's okay. We make it work, right? We make it work.
But that kind of goes to one of the things you said, is you have to become a master at time management. You know, you have to really, I live and die by my calendar. I frequently say, if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist. End of story. If you don't see me put it in that calendar, or you don't send me an invite so it'll go in the calendar, it ain't happening. I live and die by that thing. Time management is vital. You've got to have an idea of how to do that. I also readily admit I'm something of a workaholic, and if I'm not doing it for work, something else is going to fill that slot. It just so happened I actually do a show with PBS outside of my 5-day-a-week job, and it just so happened that right at the time that Rebecca was asking me to fill in here, I was being told by them, we're moving to a new building, so your show is going on hiatus for several months. And I'm like, okay. So I had that free time slot available when she asked me to jump in and help out. And going along with that time management, just basic organizational skills. I keep notebooks, I keep file folders, I keep binders of information, just trying to keep up. Some of that is me trying to deal with a lifetime of learning to deal with ADHD and still do my job, but it's skills that transfer to trying to fit this into your life. And then there's just setting your boundaries, saying, you know what, I'm not working till 1 a.m. There were times when I was working on the conference, and I had to say, you know what, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I can't force it. I can't, I don't have time to chase after this. I can't deal with that. It's just too much. And knowing how far I could go and making what I was doing fit within the boundaries of what it was I was capable of doing. And if I couldn't do it, maybe finding somebody else to do it. Delegation is another key skill you need in this job.
I totally empathize with you with the, if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. That's literally my mantra every day. So I can appreciate that. Rebecca, how do you manage? How do you juggle, you're a freelance journalist and you're the president of SPJ. How do you make that balance?
I gotta admit, like I said, the higher you go in the food chain at SPJ, the less that you will be able to put into work. I mean, right now I have a story about mariachis that's supposed to come out. It will probably be pushed back. But the fortunate thing is, again, most of you know that I've been doing this 40 years. So I've saved up financially, so I don't have to worry about paying my bills, right? And that's the fortunate thing. I don't know what it's like for someone younger, and I don't know what it's like for someone who's got a full-time job. I have a lot of respect for the past presidents who have had full-time jobs, because, right now, I get questions. Somebody does something in the media, somebody in the media needs a quote from the SPJ president. And I like to have my own quotes. I don't want the marketing department to do it for me, even though we have a very good marketing department. Sometimes I just have a list of things. I mean, I literally have in my kitchen, I have like a poster size list, and I start writing like, I talked to Pilar, or Danielle needs this. And I have a list of a to-do list that I have to look at physically, but I also have one in my computer, and I have a lot of notepads that I take notes on. So there comes a balance. I mean, I probably stop at 8 o'clock at night and then go watch Netflix or watch a movie, because all day as I'm on the computer, I'm watching, the hearings, I'm watching what's happening in Uvalde, because you constantly have to be connected, because as a leader, you may be asked, what are your feelings about Uvalde and law enforcement trying to keep information from the media? So you're constantly on your toes. Again, the further up you are in SPJ, the more questions you will ask. I'm fortunate that also I have a board that, and let me get back to what you need real quick. You need to be an independent, creative, courageous thinker. And what I mean by that is, one of the things that in I guess, strategically thinking on who I wanted on my board, including the appointees, is I wanted people that were independent thinkers. One of the things I told Danielle McLean when I appointed her and the board approved it is, I don't need a clone. I don't need a puppet. I need someone that, yeah, you can push back on me. What I don't need is just people to disrupt for the sake of disrupting. I want her to have her own thoughts. I want everybody on the board to have their own thoughts. But you also have to be cohesive. You have to be able to get along. One of the themes of our board is we're productive and positive. And if you can't do that, then it's best to just do the best you can, but be positive and productive, because we get a lot of negativity out there. So I say also be creative. Bring your thoughts. What's missing right now at SPJ? All you people who plan to run for office, what's missing? That's where you fill the void. And be courageous. Why? Because like I said, not everybody's gonna like you. Just because you run it doesn't mean they're gonna like you. I mean, believe me, I have my group that doesn't like me, but that's okay. I'm not here. Remember, when you become a leader, it's not because you want to be popular. It's because you're doing it for the organization. And I think that's important. So, be creative, be courageous, be innovative, be independent. That's what will make a good leader. Because, life is about a lot of followers. There's a lot of followers out there because they don't think they can do it. What I tell people that I bring into the fold is, you can do it. If I can do it, and I've been told, no, you can't because you're a woman or you're a Latina or you name it, then I'm here to prove you wrong. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I hope I inspire others. And anybody out there who wants to run for the board, you can do it. But don't be a puppet, and have a plan.
Danielle, as an at-large director, tell me how you're able to manage both what you do full-time and your SPJ work. I mean, I'm sure it's also hard too. I believe that you're a full-time journalist. So, these are two, in a way, two full-time type of jobs, right?
Yeah, no, it's all work. I'm a senior editor over at a news organization called Smart Cities Dive. So we're a daily, we put out 2 stories more a day in our daily newsletter.
So you're not busy, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I spend anywhere between 8 and 12 hours for that job a day, kind of like many other journalists out there. That's tricky. And then I'll spend a couple hours here, a couple hours there, like thinking about SPJ. I'm working on SPJ initiatives some days, like when I do get a little bit of free time in between phone calls and between different things I'm working on. I will pick away at something I'm working on with SPJ. I remember a few years ago when I was working on the whistleblower project, I was doing investigative reporting over at Think Progress, which is a now defunct progressive news organization. But I remember there was like a day when we had this like really big breaking, scoop that went viral, and we were fielding calls from different companies like crazy. I think it was related to gun violence. And I think it was the Parkland shooting. And it was really tough and emotionally draining. Yet we had this like deadline of like for the whistleblower project to try and get that ready for Sunshine Week. And it was pretty much I was coordinating 20 something different writers that were all provided pieces of content, trying to get them all edited, work with the staff in terms of trying to get the website up to date. And it was just like such a huge undertaking. And it's really just trying to figure out like using the time that you do have, using the breaks that you do have to try and pick away at this and pick away at what you need to do, and then try to schedule time as best you possibly can, as much as things change, to set aside time to do these responsibilities and take these undertakings on. And it's a ton of work, but there are downtimes. So it's not like you're constantly working all the time. So sometimes you might lose some sleep here and there, but like trying to get it done, especially if you have a demanding full-time job. But like then you do take the downtime that you have, and you take those breaks in between projects or initiatives or something like that. And yeah, I think that's probably the best way I can describe it. But
you can make it work, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
you figure out how to make it work.
Exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about, and I want to shift gears a bit. I know some people have some questions about, on top of the responsibilities, how many meetings am I expected to be at? Am I expected to pay my own way? Am I expected to, go to these conferences on my own dime? I'm sure that has been a barrier for some people deciding on whether or not they want to run. Rebecca, can we start with you by talking a little bit about some of the travel stipends that some of the positions get once they are put onto the board or regional coordinator position? I'm sorry, you are muted, Rebecca.
Yeah, sorry. Let me talk about time real quick. We don't have meetings all the time. And Danielle can tell you that. I don't have meetings all the time. We have board meetings, about 4 of them, maybe 5. Usually, for example, at-large directors, are they, constantly working on things? No. I may, they may say, hey, I want to take up this project. Okay, great. Or I may appoint, for example, Daniela Ibarra, she's on the delegate task force, she's on the diversity committee. And not that they're having meetings all the time. Remember, one of the things that, we do, and especially the current board, and I know with Claire coming in, because, she's the president-elect, and we pretty much do a lot of things together, is we work around your schedule. You don't work around SPJ, because SPJ doesn't pay the bills, let's be honest, So that's what I make an effort in that area. We don't have a lot of meetings. Sometimes I will say, and Danielle will confirm this, I need an emergency meeting on Sunday. Can you all meet at 9 at night? We'll do it over Zoom. Yeah. But please, people, do not think we're constantly in meetings every week, every month. No, I mean, Danielle can tell you, rarely, you may get an email from me every 2 weeks. Here's what we're up to. Here's what to look forward to in the board meeting, blah, blah, blah. That's it. But we're not, right, Danielle? We're not constantly meeting all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to clarify what I was talking about is like a lot of those are like leadership positions that like, if you're on the FOIA, Freedom of Information Committee, my example was, if you're on the ethics committee and you're trying to work on for Sunshine Week, or not, ethics week or something like that.
Right.
Then there's a lot of different panels you're trying to coordinate and organize. But yes, there's there is downtime. That's what I was kind of trying to get at a little bit, is you're not constantly always working and inundated.
It's not that 9 to 5 kind of grind.
No. And that's another thing I changed. That's another thing I changed when, as a president, I get to appoint who's the head of the committees. And I told him, look, I just need 2 things from you guys, 2 Zooms that help the chapters and members learn from. Sunshine Week. I mean, Sunshine Week is 1 week for the whole year. I mean, they can start working on it immediately. So again, even the committee chairs, I mean, people out there, they're not constantly in meetings. There's no such thing, especially under this leadership. And Claire's going to be the same way. I don't believe in having busy work. I need productive work, and that's important. And going back to the expense, let's talk about that. Well, first of all, as a president, I get a $10,000 stipend. So that helps me travel to conventions. I have to pay my own registration, by the way, but that pays for hotel flights, possibly my own food, no booze, and transportation. Will I use all that money? Probably not, because of COVID. I haven't traveled very much. And then after that, I believe the president-elect, which next year the title changes to vice president, I believe they get 4,000, and then the secretary gets 3,000, I believe, and then the at-large directors get 1,500, and then the RCs, I believe, get 1,500, right, Pilar?
I think so, but I actually haven't touched my stipend because, again, COVID, we haven't had any travel.
Yeah.
So,
and again, if, for example, Pilar wants to go to the NHJ conference, she can use it, but she'll be representing SPJ, maybe in a leadership panel. You definitely get to use that money. Is it an expense? Zoom costs nothing. The only expense is when you have to sacrifice, for example, a freelance job, which you can't do because of the job. But other than, and I'll be honest, I was secretary treasurer and I was president-elect. This is the first year that I've had to say no to work. As a president, you need time. If you want to be president and want to be good at it, you need time to answer emails. I mean, because people want it now. It's the business, right, you guys? We can't wait for maybe mañana. We have to do it now. And so I'm fortunate. Will my husband walk out on me one day? Maybe. Because I leave, I'm talking, no, he's cool. You got to make sure your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your wife, husband, even the dogs can handle it. But it is so fulfilling, you guys. I mean, I am honored to have this position, really. So think hard. You can do it. You can do it.
I feel like one of the key barriers for a lot of people might be is that they don't necessarily see someone who looks like them on the board. And I think this particular board this year has a huge amount of diversity, not just from racial backgrounds, but LGBTQ plus representation. And so I want to talk a little bit about how important it is that diversity is a big part of the SPJ board. And then also speaking to some of those folks who may think that SPJ does not necessarily represent people who look like them. What can we say about that to encourage folks who might think like that to say, no, SPJ is for everyone. It's for you too. You too can join. You too can run for one of these positions. Danielle, I'll start with you since we just heard from Rebecca, and then we'll go back around.
I think it's absolutely hugely important. I think if you think about the role that SPJ has on the industry as a whole, and we are the largest journalism organization, and so I think if there's a lot of ways that this industry needs to improve to get more diverse newsrooms, to get more opportunities for people of color, for people who are LGBTQ. Plus, I'm trans myself, and I'm a trans woman, and so I know that we are so underrepresented in newsrooms, and I think, to be honest, a lot of the coverage about, from mainstream news organizations about trans people has been completely garbage. And I know that the only way that things can change for the better is if we have representation of trans voices in the media. And so it's huge, it's critical, being able to be in a, have that voice, being able to, try to improve the industry for the better, and give my perspective is critical. And so, yeah, absolutely.
Pilar, can I ask you the same question? How important is that? And what can you say to folks who maybe look like me or look like you or look like Danielle or Rebecca, who might be on the fence and thinking, maybe this isn't for me? What would you say to them?
Think again. It is absolutely vital. The more voices we get, the more rounded a picture we get, the more SPJ looks like the world that we live in. It's a point that can't be overstressed. When we look at, just recently, Rebecca shared an article about a young man who's leaving the industry because he can't afford to pay his school loans off because the pay is so low. I was lucky. I was raised in poverty. I went to college purely on scholarships, but because I had scholarships, I didn't have school loans that I never would have qualified for. My family didn't make enough money. So I didn't have to necessarily pay that back. And I always have my husband, who is an engineer, as kind of a backstop financially. So I was able to stay in the industry when I've watched so many people over the years leave because they could not afford it. And so there have been many times in my newsroom, and now, it's starting to come up within the professional organizations where I've talked about the pay issue and how vital it is, and how we cannot continue to have, one of the biggest barriers to diverse newsrooms, just like one of the biggest barriers to a diverse organization, is the pay issue. Because if you're not able to afford to pay your bills, you're not going to be able to do the other things. And we lose those different perspectives. We lose those different voices. And they're so important. I can't tell you, I'm Latina, but I also have African-American heritage and Native American heritage. And there have been many, many times I am the only one in the newsroom with any minority experiences whatsoever. And I bring up issues from one of my three communities, and I just get this wall of blank faces. I'm a plus-sized broadcast reporter and anchor. When I started in this industry, I was a freaking unicorn. Now things are starting to change now, thank God. But, it's just another way that we're starting to normalize. And as newsrooms normalize, our organizations need to normalize too. And they can't do that if people don't step up. And if we don't do it, the world's going to leave us behind.
Very well said.
And
Rebecca,
let me jump in here real quick. And this is why, I told you 3 years ago, and even last year when I was president-elect, strategically, I knew who to reach out to. Pilar is a woman of courage. We don't need puppets. We don't need just people that just go along with the flow. I knew she had the courage to lead. And she would be a perfect example. Of course, I wanted a Latina, because we had no regional coordinators that were Latinos, I don't think ever. How can that happen? And I'll be honest with Danielle McClain, perfect example. I know there's trans kids out there, especially in Florida and Texas, they're going, gosh, they don't even love me. They don't even respect me. I want them to see someone like Danielle McClain and go, look, I'm a leader. I can do this. I told her, I had conversations with you, right, Danielle? I had conversations. I need you to be the voice you want to be. Like I am for Latinos or women. I want little trans kids out there to go, I'm not going to end my life because people don't care for me. Look at Danielle McClain. Look at her. She can do it. I can do it. But again, it takes courage. It takes courage to speak out. I think that's important. And talking about diversity, yes, we're lucky. Right now, the board is 9 people, and 6 of them are people of color. And, and again, we have trans, and we have but look at the ages too, right? Daniela Ibarra, 24 years old. I think she could be now 25, right? I think I could be the oldest because I'm 64. And so look at that. That's important because we all bring something new to the table. We bring something new. What the younger people do to the veterans, right? That's important. Because I have had people who are not diverse background who are white. And by the way, my husband's white. So, I have nothing against white people, but people will go, well, what about us? What about our voice? Your voice is important. Because let me tell you, we would not have this diversity right here. Look at us four. If we did not have an SPJ membership who said, come on in, we welcome you, because our organization is majority white. And this is what's beautiful about SPJ, that we don't talk the talk, we're walking the walk. And that's because we have SPJ members who believe that we belong at the table, everybody, including age, whether you're, and again, Pilar, it's interesting that you brought up about the plus size, or whether you're a size 2, or, what I love today is the changes, especially African-American women, you can wear your hair the way you want to wear it, not the way they tell you to wear it, right? And so I think that's the beauty. When you're a leader, that's why we want you to be a leader. Bring your unique self. No clone, no puppet, your unique self. That's what I would want on my board, and that I do have on this board.
I'm going to go to a question that is in the chat right now. Pilar, do you want to say something before I go to this question?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add one quick point that kind of came to me as Rebecca was talking, but we've really moved forward. SPJ has really diversified over the last few years, but one thing that the world around us has shown is that we can make steps forward if we do not continue to have leaders step up and turn over and bring the next round up. If we don't continue to have diverse offerings, things will just go back to the way they were before.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. And I got to give a shout out to Alex Triquenio, the president, 3 times over. I mean, she came to me and she said, we need diversity. This is a white woman, and said, we need diversity. Please help me make it happen. No other president had reached out to me. Nobody else. So kudos to her.
Let me go to the chat here. Mackenzie Romero asks, in a way, COVID has opened up access and acceptance for remote work and meetings. Is that expected to remain in place as COVID hopefully eventually fades for SPJ?
Does she mean, you mean meetings with board members?
I think she means board meetings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think she means board meetings.
Yeah, definitely. All our board meetings this year have been remote. I mean, the only one that I think we're going to have in person is at the convention in October. But it saves on travel. I think I've traveled once in 2 years. I've gotten on a plane once in 2 years. That's it. We want to make sure it fits your schedule, right? Flying to DC or San Francisco, whatever, it's breaking up your schedule. We want to, because again, SPJ does not pay the bills. Your job does. So we work around you. This remote thing, I don't think it's going away unless, SPJ wants me to fly somewhere. But no, it'll stay. And again, we work around your schedule.
Tom has a question in the chat as well that I want to acknowledge. He's asking, volunteer groups have one of 2 problems with smaller roles. Is RC a smaller role, and that is either too many people want to do it or not enough? What is the situation with us here at SPJ? So I think he's specifically asking for the role of regional coordinator. Are we in a situation where we either have too many people trying to run for regional coordinator or not enough? And I could say, as the chair of the nominations committee, we do not have enough. In a perfect world, every single position will be contested, right? We don't want a situation where there's only one choice. That's not necessarily democratic. That's not what we're trying to do. We want people to have a choice, right? Rebecca, did you want to go ahead and respond to that?
Yeah, I don't know. A good question, Tom. Here's the thing. It is not a position that people are clamoring to get to, right? But I think the reason why, and I hope, because I hope that Claire Regan takes this over, it's not defined. I mean, there is some definition, and there's been some regional coordinators that have been in a position for a long time, and then some who have left. I think now is a time to improve that area. I mean, I remember when Pilar said, well, what does it take? There's really, there's a kind of a guide, but it isn't a guide. And, there's a lack of communication sometimes. And I just think that we, the board, especially the 3 top people, we need to improve it. We need to do it better, because I want it to be a position just like the other board positions that people want to run for. Now, I know that in the past several years, they've lost the ability to vote, just because I believe the board at one time was just too big. I mean, too many voices, it never stops. It just goes on forever and ever. So I thought that move was right. But, you know, I'm hoping that it becomes a position, and this is something that I want to talk to regional coordinators, especially the new ones, that, you know, how can we do better? Because they, in a sense, are the link between the board and the chapters. But, you know, right now, I'll be honest, we got some pretty damn good chapters, you know, and communities that, in a sense, they're self-sufficient and very independent. So I think we still need to figure out a way where regional coordinators can really use their time and their experience and their guidance in the best way to benefit our organization. I know that maybe didn't answer your question, but we need improvement. No, not everybody wants to be an RC, and I think because it's not really defined.
I want to take another question from Mackenzie. This is specifically for Danielle. Danielle, I love seeing what you have accomplished working with Rebecca and the board this year. And it's even more impressive after your experience running for election. Looking back at your campaign, what advice would you have for someone preparing to run?
I think going in with confidence is a huge thing. I don't think public speaking comes totally naturally for me. I mean, I'm print, so like, and I've been on TV a couple of times, but not too much. I've been on plenty of panels, and I somehow make it through. But you know, I think preparing yourself is clutch, but also just like believing in yourself and slowing down and being really, you know, thinking about the best way to articulate your message, I think are like the really some just key, you know, is really a key thing that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. I think, you know, thinking about like why exactly you are there, and really kind of doing that deep soul searching is crucial. And really thinking about your plan and thinking about how you would want to go about you know, the position that you're running for, and then just going out and just sharing that message in the simplest, easiest way that conveys it to the most amount of people. I think it's really important. You know, practicing and preparing, getting better at public speaking and improving. So, you know, those are, I'd say, you know, campaigning, that's what it's all about. You know, building those relationships is also really clutch and important and key. So all those relationships that you've built over the years at SPJ, you know, you might want to call them, dust out, you know, your phone book, your Rolodex, and give them a call. Ask people about like what they want to see and how to improve SPJ, and try to get that feedback and incorporate that. And so you can find like areas of weakness and incorporate that into your platform, about, you know, in terms of like trying to improve it and make it better. So yeah, that I'd say those are some of the key things about that I'd learned. I tried to do that in my initial run last year when I ran for board or ran for treasurer, but you know, something I definitely would like to improve on in the future and continue working at. So yeah.
So I'm looking at the time right now, and I would love to hear some closing thoughts or some closing kind of you know, boost in the right direction for folks to decide to actually run for an SPJ elected position. If I could, I would like to start with Pilar and then Danielle, and then I'll give Rebecca the last word.
Okay, closing thoughts. Don't be afraid to try. You know, I had no idea what I was doing when I started. I jumped right in and, you know, just, yeah, did I have a few missteps? Of course. But I figured it out as I've gone along, and hopefully I've kind of gotten my feet under me at this point. And, you know, if I had the time and could run for re-election and do it another year, I think I would. But my schedule that opening in my schedule is about to close. So I have to keep that in mind too. And, you know, just don't be afraid to take the plunge. There are plenty of folks that will help you swim. You're not going to sink.
Danielle, last words.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's really well said. I think not trying to do everything all at once and trying to take too big of a bite of something in terms of change is really clutch. Just find a few things that you're good at and you know you can exceed at and that you have a plan for, and take those on. But like you don't, if you try to do too much, you're just going to get mediocre results all across the board. But if you think of something really, some kind of change in some way to make SPJ better, whatever it is that you believe is the right path, do that, do the best you possibly can with that, and move on to the next thing. But try not to overwhelm yourself, take on too much, and make sure that you have the resources in place, the people in place, and connections in place to be able to get that work done, to delegate work, and to see your vision come to fruition.
Rebecca, you have the last word.
Wow. First of all, if you want to run for office, remember, it doesn't happen until October that we vote for you. So what's important right now is to reach out to people in SPJ that are pretty influential. Don't send an email, contact them on LinkedIn or Twitter and say, hey, do you have a few minutes to talk on the phone? Because if I feel your passion, if I can feel that vibe, odds are you're going to get my vote, and I'm going to tell other people, vote for her, vote for him, right? That's important. Right now, we have a lot of chapters. They have a lot of great events. Show up. I don't care if you live in San Francisco, but Long Island has an event, by the way. They have a great event going on Thursday. Go over there, show up, get to know your names. It's not what you know, it's who knows you. I don't know your name, I can't vote for you. Also, make sure that when you speak from your heart. You don't have to have a speech. When I talk right now, I'm just talking from my heart, what I'm feeling. That's what people want. I think sometimes people lose because they get wrapped up in their plan. Just talk from your heart. That's all I want to know. That's all I want to know. You don't have to be the greatest speaker. Just have a passion. And I also think you need to have a plan. You're going to have people like me that says, what's your plan? How are you going to get there? Just like you would, remember, like a story. How are you going to get from A to Z? You got to tell me. And please, if you're doing it for your resume, please don't run. I just think that there's other things that fill your resume. And more than anything, the last thing I will say is be unafraid. Unafraid to lose. Unafraid to put yourself out there. Unafraid to say, you know what, once I get in that position, bye-bye to you. Unafraid to bring ideas. No idea is a dumb idea if you don't tell us. That's important. And like Danielle and Pilar have said, have a passion for this. Because of anything right now, we're going through a tough time in journalism. We're still being attacked by people out there, right? Just make sure that you will be the lifesaver for members who need you. You are the boots on the ground. That's the reason you should run. Nothing else will fit this. If you have the courage to run, you can do it. Like I said, if I can do it, you can do it too.
So I want to close out the panel I just put in the chat a link to SPJ Election Central that has all of the information that you're going to need when you decide you're going to run. Because I know right now someone's going to watch this recording and they're going to say, you know what, I can do this, right? So I want you all to make sure that you go to spj.org/elections, and that is Election Central. It has all the information that you will need. Just so that you are aware, September 15th, that is the deadline by which you need to say that you're going to run for a position, and you can do so on Election Central's website. Also, I want to also shout out all of the open positions that are available for this particular year. We have the regional coordinator positions for Region 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9. They are open. Also the VP position, which was previously the president-elect position. We also have the secretary-treasurer position, and then we have 2 at-large director positions open for 2022. Right? So there has to be a position that you feel like you can take a hold of and put your mark on and make a difference for SPJ. So I encourage you, please, please, please declare your candidacy. And then also, if you have any questions, there are plenty of FAQs on that website. There's also a link to an email that goes directly to me. I am more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can also contact Rebecca Aguilar, who has put her information in the chat as well. And I'm sure Danielle and Pilar would be happy to answer your questions too. So again, run, run, run. You can do this. Again, this is going to be recorded. So as soon as this is all processed and all of those good things, we'll make sure that this is also available on the Election Central website. So if you have any friends who didn't get a chance to come to this, but they have questions or they want to know more information, tell them to watch the recording. That's why we have these here. We've had 3 of these. All 3 of these are on the website. So thank you everyone so much for attending this evening. Thank you so much to Pilar, to Danielle, to Rebecca for joining us this evening and sharing all of your journeys to SPJ and encouraging others to join the ranks as well. I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.